or variety, but a more applicable explanation is a range of different things. And what we've got to remember is that diversity is not like some esoteric academia-based obscure concept. Diversity is actually humanity. If we frame it as such, that would help, because humanity is, in essence, a range of identities too numerous to list. In other words, as stated previously, as opposed to being a range of identities too numerous, it's a range of different things. Simply put, if we frame it as such, we don't need to always get into this notion of us versus them, or grouping, or notion of what is this person. We just got to accept them openly and honestly and afford for actual honest exchange of ideas. We're defined by our perceptions, predilections, preferences, and preconceived notions. Valuing diversity is synonymous with valuing and respecting humanity as a whole. But when we say we're going to value humanity, it means each and every expression of humanness. We can't draw these little artificial boundaries of what that is. Like, I'm okay with talking to A and B, but I have a problem with C and D. Or the notion of that I'll speak with whomever, provided they operate within this narrow scope of what we deem to be human. We've got to let that go. So I do not have the answer. I can only offer an answer based upon my perspective. Honest, open, sincere, respectful communication. And it's not lost on me that my perspective is due to my being able to feel safe doing so. I'm a man, I'm in a city where I grew up, my family's been here since 1905. It's a luxury that's not shared by most. And we got to keep in mind that those fighting beside us should be allowed to inquire without fear of being labeled insensitive, insultive, or somehow, oh, you've offended me. And then also those that are doing the inquiry, they need to be mindful and respectful when they're doing so. Because we got to keep in mind that sometimes we ask a question to a given person, given identity, how many times they've been faced with that previously. That may put them in a feeling that, once again, I have to explain or justify myself or my existence, simply because they simply don't understand or they don't know it. We've got to kind of lessen these barriers and understand that we're on the same team, that if in fact someone's coming to inquire, assume they're doing it objectively and honestly, and not be so quick to be incensed by the very question. I mean, in my particular circumstance, I'm black, I grew up in Idaho, my family came here as black Christians, the first black church in Idaho. I'm a resident Muslim, my daughter's Muslim. Those two identities don't necessarily go together, but we coexist in the same family without issue. And that happens because my mother, myself, my family fully accept the other as family. And we don't have to be the same to necessarily be on the same team. My community, my Muslim community is representative of 45 ethnic groups from 38 countries. Awesome. We're not exactly, there's more that divides us than unites us, whether it be our madhab, our school of thought, our country of origin. But at the end of the day, we're all still Muslim. We come together on Friday. We have to accept these little vicissitudes of our difference and accept the fact that, okay, we're Muslim. While we're here, we're going to assume that we're on the same team. We're not alike. We're going to placate each other, pretend like we share the same even belief system on everything, but we can assume that we're going to deal with each other respectfully. And so, like I said before I started, I'd much rather have a dialogue and a conversation about how we can do so rather than me pretending to have all of the answers. Because most importantly, I think we have to just learn to talk to those that we're not as comfortable with. Whether it be those from the other side of the aisle, whether it be those from the other side of the political spectrum, whether it be whatever identity by which they abide by. You've got to be willing to have these kind of uncomfortable conversations, but based on openness and respect. Provided you do that, everything else is easy. And you've got to also understand when you go down that path, you're going to get a question that may not be framed perfectly. We can't be so quick to judge or quick to assume that somebody asking a question that wasn't necessarily perfect had ill intent when doing so. Like everybody in this room, I can very much assume we may not be of the same political ideology, but we're here for at least a vested interest to move something forward. So I need not be sensitive to you asking a question of me that I see, or how dare you ask such a thing. How else is somebody going to learn if they're not willing to have an open dialogue?
We needed you 20 minutes ago.
Pardon me?
We needed you 20 minutes ago.
And I think, but really, I was told that things got a little heated with the debate, but I think as part of the issue is where we all are like operating from a place of almost like tension, for lack of a better word. Like the allostatic load is so high that we're almost looking for an opportunity to be incensed or to shoot into action, as opposed to hearing the other side.
I was telling her this the other night.
I mean, just
last night.
And that's really what it comes down to. We don't need to attack the premise or the idea of the other individual. We simply need to hear them out first and foremost. And then if we can actually go through the thought process with a logical, deductive reasoning approach, if we can draw them to it, bring them to a conclusion that perhaps challenges their basis, that's much less inflammatory than attacking their actually idea. Their idea.
Can you help us right now, please?
Well, if I can, I'm be happy to. I mean, that's what
Really, for real, your present is perfect. The universe has aligned. And your approach, critical. 3 things to talk about, and maybe we can all help do this. 1, we already live in a racist society. Can we agree to that? We live in a sexist society.
Absolutely. Oh man, I get away with a lot.
I mean, yeah, okay. So, the Green Party, we have these great 10 key values and 4 pillars that have no infrastructure, no measurements, no tools to support any of the great ideas. Given that, someone like me, who's educated, who's smart,
Gotcha.
who's world traveled, all of these things, I'm being attempted to be maligned. And after going through writing statements, pulling people together, I'm now slapping people. I'm tired of y'all. Because no one up there is smarter than I am. Actually, no one up there is a farmer. No one coming has traveled, lived outside, owned a business, is Muslim, whose parents are Christian and Muslim who don't fight, who's respectful. But I'm considered angry because now I'm speaking the truth. And I've been speaking it since February. Now, you gonna know I am loud. And I've been kind. And now I'm enough. I'm the only woman running. Why? Sexism, racism. Let's just stop. Let's get real. So my question is, how do we, as a political party, understand that unless we're anti-racist, anti-sexist, pro-love, peace and harmony in a measurable way, we just talking nice?
One thing I've realized is that we get a wide range of people coming in, right?
Okay.
You've got to meet people where they are, not what we assume they need to be, and learn to get them to where they need to
Okay.
be, but in a way that they'll be actually accepting of doing so.
Okay.
Figured this out literally 6 months ago talking to my mother. My mom's a senator here, right?
Okay.
So she's kind of like my little voice on my shoulder, always like, hey dummy, not everybody is where you are. Nobody has like the same perspective because you don't know what they've faced, you don't know what they've dealt with, you don't know what they've been exposed to. We can have 2 perceptions of, I'm almost 43 years old. 2 black men grew up in Boise, Idaho. Exact same era, exact same age, even same neighborhood.
Okay.
My perception is predicated on what I've been exposed to, what's happened to me, and my background, right?
Okay.
I could fundamentally say Boise, Idaho is not a city that has systemic racism at a level that exceeds anywhere else in the country, according to what I've been exposed to, right? That could be my reality. The perception of the gentleman the next block over could be completely antithetical to that and completely in opposition to that, but be equally true.
Gotcha.
And that's one thing we gotta stop and realize, that there is no universally held truth. Your truth could be 100% true and a complete opposite and contradiction to my own. And what we've got to figure out that these truths, your truth, doesn't necessarily make somebody else's truth a falsehood. Because we can have this coexistence that are directly in opposition to one another, but both 100% equally true. And that's why I say we have to meet people where they are, as opposed to where we think they should be. Like, what you said, nothing you said was up for debate. But the next most important point is, how do we navigate that without disenfranchising those who fail to see that these are like salient issues? Like, how do we take them through a logical thought process without assailing them to get them to realize, ooh, she's got a point, without like starting off with, you've got to accept A, B, C, and D. It's kind of like when you talk about like a diplomatic conversation between countries. You can't have like the preconditions to assume that we're going to come to the table agreeing on these 5 points, because sometimes those 5 points aren't agreeable. I mean, they're really not. I mean, people will sit up here and think about right now. I mean, I found it funny that this place is where you guys chose to have it, because the Idaho Freedom Foundation is based like right across the street.
What is that?
That just cracked me up, though. You know what I'm saying? It just cracked me up.
I want to know.
Because it's a great juxtaposition of like the thought process. A very, yeah. And so,
I didn't know.
well, we can't assume
Got you.
anything. I mean, you have to be able to meet people where they are, and then take them through a thought
I'm
process.
not going to want to ask a question. Anybody else? Before I get on my
I love the shirt, by the way. That's why Muslims say they know.
Okay. These are not dumb guys. They benefit from this. So where they are is in a place of privilege. So how do we get people who are okay with where they are to understand? Like one, I think Dario said, yeah, I'm privileged. That was movement. Black brother who's gay, who's Jewish. He said that. Questions for me are simple. 2, privileged Howie Hawkins, white male. Will you accept responsibility for ensuring that everybody's at the table? It's a yes or no for me. Dario, will you attend a meeting of all the presidential candidates? It's yes or no. That's my only questions, but I heard angry, bitter. 2 questions. Cracking up. Like, I didn't ask them to change shit. I didn't
So
think.
like a psychological level, though, anytime you put somebody, you put upon somebody, I call it false dichotomy, right?
False dichotomy.
Nothing in life is as simple as black or white. Because
For real.
Everything's great, right?
Nah.
If I pose a question to you,
Stop right here, help me with that, because I.
okay, this is why. If I pose a question to you,
Okay.
right or wrong, I will give you 2 choices. That's operating on the assumption that there are no existing phenomena outside of those 2. And that's cheating as far as even giving an actual argument or discussion, because you're boxing the person in. So their natural reaction is going to be not answering either of those 2 options, but it's going to fall into a fight. No, that's just human nature, though. It really is. Now, I agree with you because I'm a very cut and dry, straight shooter kind of person. But let's be honest, the vast majority of humans don't operate on that level, right? We have to understand, again, we got to meet them where they are. If the issue is trying to get them to concede having a myriad of voices at the table, my posing a loaded A or B question to you is not going to get us there. And everything has to base around what is the end result we're trying to achieve, and then plan backwards from there. And I mean, even if I don't believe in sacrificing my ideals or my thought process, but I will tailor how I deliver my message in such a way to make it more palpable that at the end of our conversation, you're about 3 feet from where you started and have no idea how you got there. Because I've done so in a manner that you even realize, oh, he just changed my frame of thinking on a given issue, but he didn't challenge my held beliefs before. So like I took you through, nobody's going to argue with logic or sound reasoning. Once you become an affront to whatever they believe, they cut off even listening. So sometimes we have to take it like a half step back, think about what we're trying to achieve in the end, and then plan from there. We can't come at people with this, you're with us or you're against us mentality, because there's some people that I totally disagree with on like 94% of all political things, but I can work with them on that 6%. We're not allies, but out of the 6% of these issues we're trying to achieve, today we're going to get together, get this done, and after this we're not going to talk. I mean, I know it's a terrible, it's an overreach, but in World War II, we partnered up with Russia to defeat the mutually held enemy. My enemy's enemy is my friend. Sometimes we got to navigate on that level. That, okay, I don't agree with you on like 80% of what you stand for. But we can find intersection on this, because the beauty of that is, if we
or the
work,
other way around, like as a compliment, somebody supported the Soviet Union, they were able to work with us a little bit with the U.S.
yeah, exactly, but just,
So, yeah.
we have to find those places of where we can work together. Because those, when you find that little 2 or 3% chance that you work together once in a while, you'll be shocked to see that another opportunity will come about much more rapidly, because you have like this notion of shared trust. From that one time you work together, we can't make everything this all in, either you're with us or you're not. If you're not 100% on my page, I can't deal with you, because we're just going to end up with like 15 camps or schools of thought within a given party or within a given movement that refuse to work with one another. Because we can't even agree on one of our, like you were saying, you've got these 10 precepts that we're operating under. But getting the power holders to come together of how to navigate within those 10, from what you've articulated to me, is a bit of an issue.
Well, for me, this is my reality. I'm a bold somebody. Nobody gonna overstep me. This for me was like, I've had enough.
And I totally
Like,
understand.
I had enough, and we have been green enough with you for 7 months. Now it's time to be in your face.
True, and there's a time when you
It
have to-
worked. Let me tell you
You have to
something.
evolve. There's a
Yeah,
time you have to
at
change
some
things.
point, either you're going to step up, because we're running for office.
Yeah.
And we're all, it's a, and you know, we ain't got 15%, so ain't no real competition. Y'all can play if you want to, but I'm not.
Gotcha.
You know, you gotta know what we're trying to build a political party that can eventually lead, but we have no infrastructure to support those things. Our campaigns support that. So we're not, you're not a threat to us because you're not doing what we're doing. But let's just have that level of respect. Attend the meetings, have our discussions with each other, not make it a public. But okay, if you don't want to attend, I will. I'll just tell. He didn't show up to do it.
Yeah, but we do have to
I'm sorry,
we
y'all.
have to move diplomatically oftentimes to get to the, sometimes taking a loss in a battle doesn't necessarily mean you lost it.
Oh, I know that. I hit for a reason and won. I'm good. Like I'm a strategist.
And I'm big on strategy.
Yeah, so understood, but it's like,
But it does get tiresome.
oh,
You're
I
always
mean,
put
but
down.
it's a one-time hit for me. I'm growing grapes, making wine and stuff. I ain't got time for that. That's why I had to just enough. I'm tired. This is it, y'all. So you know, you come with some prep, I'm slapping you. That's it. But for Iowa, back to Idaho. I'm sorry, y'all. You know, I ain't drinking nothing. I'm tired. How do we help support the Green Party moving forward with their initiatives and us actually having a party here? Because there's definite forces that would support what we're doing. A sister earlier talked about how to frame our 10 key values, our 4 pillars within these folks who shoot to kill and eat, people who grow, do different things. Our party is privileged, and they can be great liberals running about the war and all this stuff, and they say no to this, no that. We ain't gonna get no voters if y'all keep not knowing how to talk to people.
And I don't know enough about how we've managed to like dial things to like kind of appeal to Idaho folks.
Okay.
They wouldn't naturally do so. I can only speak to that from a tactical level.
Gotcha.
Is find what's, for lack of a better word, sacred to Idahoans. And
Find
then navigate
what's-
from
say
there.
it for
Yeah.
one more time.
Find what's sacred, and let's be honest, Boiseans aren't Caldwellians aren't people in Oasis, Idaho. So number one, it can't be this sweeping indictment of, okay, Idahoans think this.
Gotcha.
You know your audience first and foremost, as far as who am I talking to? Am I talking to a metro center such as Boise, the economic engine of the state, or am I talking to a farmer in like Mountain Home, Oasis, Idaho area who has entirely different concerns and needs? And then like something like hemp could be of interest to them if you can talk to them on an agricultural level, growing it, selling it, chopping it, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got to know, okay, what is important to them? What are they facing? Not so much my agenda,
Gotcha.
but what can I give you that you already need that will give you, that will make you choose to want to come hear what I have to say.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's just my personal approach to this, as opposed to telling people what they need, ask them.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah.
And we have that problem in our mosque. We have this huge disconnect between the first generation born and the people who've been here, like who came to America. And I said, well, hey, like, I work with our youth a lot. They said, well, how did you connect with the youth so well? How do you get them to do A, B, C, and D? I said, it's not rocket science. I asked them. I don't come in there with any preconceived idea. I ask them, hey, what do we want to do? They'll tell you.
I find that when I'm trying to build a consensus with somebody who may be politically opposed to my ideas, I use the Socratic method. I'm
There you go.
asking them questions about maybe leading to what I'm trying to get the point to, but I'm trying to give them an opportunity to help.
Tell me what you.
Yeah, re-inform each other about what our mutual situation is and how we can come closer together.
Because for the most part,
It takes a lot of practice to be able to do that, but
well, we have much more overlap. Even as polarized as the parties are now, the vast majority of people, regardless of their party affiliation, kind of sit in this weird 40 to 55% middle, with like a couple of issues that pull on one way or the other.
The 60% who didn't vote, or the 40%
No, I-
Exactly.
that didn't vote.
Exactly.
40%.
That's
I want us, our party, to go after the 40% of America.
And that's what-
We get them, we don't need nobody.
Yeah,
So-
that's true.
That's my game plan.
I know one of the things that I ran into issues when I started taking classes at Boise State University on nonprofits and volunteering organization, and some of the lessons that learned, particularly with international organizations, is a lot of them had this nasty tendency to walk into an area and tell people what they needed.
Exactly.
It's like, you need a well in the center of town. Well, no, because a well in the center of town takes away from the women's time down at the creek. Now, the men are watching them 24/7, so how do the women resolve issues without the men wanting to get in the way? It's one of those things where a lot of our nonprofits, we don't take into consideration the culture that we're trying to help, because we assume that they want what we have,
Exactly.
Yeah.
which isn't always true.
Because like I said, we have 45 groups at the mall, 45 ethnic groups from 38 countries of origin.
Right.
I have a gross idea of like an overview of many of the different cultures. But first and foremost, if you're dealing with anybody, ask them. That's why I think, and more importantly, it's such a genuine thing to admittedly tell somebody, hey, I would like to know what you think about A, B, C, and E, because I don't know. Give them an opportunity to create that connection by this exchange of ideas and telling you about what they do, what they need, what they think, as opposed to me being the savior coming in who has all the answers, all the ideas, and this is how you must do things. You just gotta ask. Just inquire. I don't know why that's so tough. I knew everything when I was like 13. But now when I'm 43, I figured out that that's just not the case. But I really think that some of our organizations have this ivory tower mentality, that if you do it this way, success will follow, and all the evidence points to the contrary. Inquire, ask, and put your ego in your back pocket.
So you and I have talked about this before, but the idea of a community and brotherhood, there in the mosque, like you said, you have 43 distinct cultural personalities that coexist, and they've even built the bridges outside of the mosque. They participate in the same soccer leagues. They coach, and not just among the refugee community. Tekle himself, is very involved in the refugee community gardens. What is it that we miss being, I don't know, non-racial?
I think, maybe I tried to study about this, about how you have a lack of suicide in minority communities, right?
Yes.
And so one of the protectorates against
Black?
suicide, black, Hispanic, like any minority community for the most part has a much lesser occurrence of suicide.
Young male
Because that
suicide.
Cultural identity and in some cases religiosity. It's a notion of you have a clan, you have a crew, you have this shared identity. It's a protectorate against this notion of feeling ostracized, isolated, left out. I think this being this amorphous identity that we created in America that we don't really have like we're no longer Italian, we're no longer Irish. People kind of buy into this notion of we're American, but what does that mean? I think that can be very insulating and isolating. That we no longer have like these like not milestones, but these structures in life that kind of guide us through the rougher times. That you've got like I've got a family, right?
Yeah.
When I was raised in the church, so I had my church family on top of that, who half of them are biological family, half of them are not. But then we had the extended family, like people who used to go to the church from elsewhere. So I had all these areas of support that my respective tribe was huge. Even at the mosque now, yes, ethnic groups stick with each other, but I'm cool with many of the ethnic groups, and so that becomes like your second or third string support group.
Your cousins.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I mean, we all are looking for this notion of feeling accepted, safe, and valued. And now that, and since that homogeneity as far as like cultural or ethnic background kind of forces you to do that when you're in a new land, seeing as we've been here for generations, on end, we lose some of that. You kind of become like this non-cultural specific entity, and you kind of insulate and isolate. I think we've got to find like some shared values, ideas, whether it be religion, culture, something deeper than just what we do for fun, to sincerely and truly connect with other humans. That's been a lost art. Like people really are so ungiving of themselves. Like relationships are very transactional, and we want to pretend like, as far as the Facebook folks, like how great your life is all the time, or you're looking for. I'm trying not to oversimplify. You're looking for like affirmation, but how often do we really go connect with somebody for an hour or two, just chit-chatting over I call it talk, tea, or coffee? That just doesn't happen unless we're all so busy and so distracted. We just don't connect on a true interpersonal level. And that's part of it. I mean, you're distracted by so much in life that you no longer give of yourself to the group. Everything's very transactional. And that, I think, is just really insulating and isolating. You've got to get past that. You've got to have some of these shared customs, practices, identity that bring you closer together, as opposed to just what you want from something. You've got to be willing to give up yourself. You have to. And that's kind of a lost art. I mean, we don't do that anymore, in my theory.
No, we don't. Like you said, it's gone transactional.
Exactly.
How many likes did you get on the Facebook post?
Or even did you see what I posted yesterday on Facebook? And that's just very odd to me.
You haven't liked it yet. Why haven't you liked it yet?
Exactly.
Yes.
So we have a very transactional, superficial existence, and we're an unwillingness to show anything less than what's great. And I have a group of cats that train with me on the weekends and during the week, and we beat the hell out of each other. From like sparring to wrestling to weights to running, and that all sounds like military.
Yeah.
Well, in your background, when you suffer together, you get much closer. Whether it be a refugee community, whether it be a black community, being oppression, things in that regard, suffering draws people closer together because you have a vested interest in the other person's outcome. It's beautiful that we don't have to suffer much over here, but we don't feel the need to really connect under duress anymore. Because how often do we really experience like real pain?
It's been a while since I've had a really solid, in-depth relationship with someone.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do that anymore. I mean, and suffering draws us closer together. I really think it does. Shared hurt, shared experiences, whether it be emotional, whether it be physical, whether it be living someplace at a given time, but you connect. Hurt, pain connects us. It's something we all know, something we've all experienced, and when you do it as a group, it draws you much more closely together. I think pain's a beautiful thing, personally, but that's just me.
But it's one of those things. A lot of us have goals that, we don't want to hurt in order to grow.
Pain lets you know you're living. That's the way I look at it. I tell my daughter that all the time. We did a races last weekend, and we were prepping for it. It got kind of messed up. I told her, hey, you're going to hit a quarter away, and the cramp's going to hit because we didn't condition long enough. And so we have a little stupid mantra. I said, baby, what we're going to do? She's like, run to the pain. Or she knows, embrace the pain. That's what I've taught her from day one. She's 8 years old. That pain is a necessary part of life. accept it and expect it, or learn how to deal with it. And she's 8, and she can figure this out. We just have to change our framing as far as everything revolves around avoiding hurt, conflict, or pain. Pain's inevitable.
So a thought like that. You have a definitive goal that you want when you go on a race, when you run, when you train to fight. You understand that there is going to be pain as part of that process. But that's you against you. How do you take that and translate it into the relationship? Because I know getting involved with someone is going to hurt me at some point. How do I prepare so that the pain doesn't stop me from achieving that higher goal in the relationship?
I think if we really accept that pain is inevitable and is truly part of being truly alive, then we wouldn't worry about jumping into a given whatever type of relationship out of fear of being hurt. Because now if you assume that you're going to be, whether it be a small hurt or a big hurt, but you're operating under the premise that hurt is inevitable, then you're no longer going to be apprehensive about getting involved because you've now accepted that, okay, me choosing to really offer myself up, I'm offering an opportunity for this person to hurt me. And I'll admit, I'm not great at that as far as other than like combat training, et cetera, like emotionally and those kind of things. I'm pretty closed off. It takes a bit to get there. But I've realized as I've gotten older that's a bad thing. I mean, you're insulating yourself from even the opportunity and availability to truly connect with people if you're unwilling to be a little, and I hate the word, but vulnerable. I despise that word. But we have to be. I mean, yeah, because how else do you really truly connect with them? I'm assuming 9 out of 10 people here are all really close to your mother. And mothers are great, right? They're the most wonderful thing in the world. But your mother also chastised you when it was necessary because she loved you. It was that unconditional, never-ending, no matter what you do, love that caused her to have to cause you hurt once in a while to protect you on the long run. And if we frame it from that perspective, that pain is just a necessary part of life. It doesn't have to be animosity.
Can I give a word? Discipline. It's just good discipline. It hurts, but I'm so glad how I was raised because I can wait and suffer, but when I step out, I can go to the end of the fight. I'm gonna suffer and be in pain and work with you, but when I plant my feet, I'm stable.
We have to be able to endure.
Yes.
Life is never promised to be easy.
No, it hasn't. Yeah. Tell us about Black people here, how we get here, what we do, how we make money, what's the good, what's the bad.
So first when we came here was Amanda Moulton. She came and founded helped found First Presbyterian Church. She got here in 1867.
Okay.
The first Black church that was here was St. Paul Baptist Church. That was built by my great-great-grandfather. He got here in 1905. The 1900 census said there were 47 coloreds in all of Ada County. So my clan got here in 05. The other half to marry into them got here about the same time or a year later. They were out farming in Caldwell because of the homesteading.
Gotcha.
And so one branch came from farmers, one branch came from religion. That was the only Black church here, so everybody went there. His grandson, my grandfather, was the first Black athlete in Boise State, which they actually integrated college football in 1944,
Gotcha.
which is well ahead of the curve nationally. Side note, Idaho as a whole has been oddly ahead of the times as far as racial relations. Because, with blacks, let me qualify that, with blacks they were. Because there's so few of us who weren't a threat. As opposed to the Chinese Exclusion Act, they were once upon a time they were 25% of the population. Native Americans, we have all the history there, they didn't treat them well. But Black history in Idaho has been one of much more opportunity because, University of Idaho was founded in 1890. They had their first, 1889, and they had their first Black graduate in 1899. That's just mind blowing when you think about that level. In 1872, blacks were allowed to go to public schools fully in Idaho.
Wow.
That's like 100 years before most of the more
So
liberal
if
states.
you're like traveling through town and you see a cop is gonna pull you over and shoot you.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, no. But, okay, another side note. I also am on the police chief advisory panel, and I work
He's
with
a
the
known
chief of
dude.
police. And yeah, so, I mean, and my mom is,
Yeah, okay.
but not mistaken, the same week I had a meeting with the police chief on a Friday, I was pulled over, profiled, and harassed by an out-of-state cop we transferred in, he pulled me over, and I thought it was comical, because he was, you could tell, a little younger, a little too hot in the,
Ferocity.
a little hostile. And the cat next to him was an older gentleman, very laid back. We were discussing having a conversation, while the other guy's so sure he had a problem. And I mentioned in passing, like, oh hell, my aunt works with y'all. I just totally forgot that she works for the police as well. He's like, well, who's your aunt? And I told him. He's like, so your mom's like, yeah, my mom's a senator. And I'm like, hey, you should tell your guy if he's going to profile. He only needs to know like 2 or 3 black last names in Idaho to really like steer clear of problems. I mean, just common sense.
Dude,
I mean,
look,
have a
hello.
little- and I had a
You
pal.
shouldn't be profiling anyway.
True, but I'm just like, but if you really want, and I had a police activities league jacket on. The elder gentleman noticed as soon as we started talking. So he was like, okay, he's obviously, because we don't give those to anybody but the coaches on the police activities league. So he knew that if I'm coaching for the police activities league,
You're connected.
I'm obviously not a criminal, you know what I'm saying? But the other guy was so, steadfast and sure that he had a perp. That it happens. But to me, I'm not it's comical. Because that's.
You're fortunate to.
But I actually had the opportunity, and it's a very tactical thing. Me getting hot, bothered, and upset, I will get shot. But I have the luxury of knowing how to retain and have an attorney. And I'd much rather survive this little, exchange and then call my attorney. You know what I'm saying? It's just you gotta look long game. Everything's always got to. I might tell my daughter, how to speak to police, how to deal with police, and she has a very good relationship with police. But to conduct herself in such a way, as the same way my mother taught us, that no, your job is to leave that interaction with your life. Be respectful. Chip on your shoulder. When you get home, tell me what went wrong. And that's well before my mom was in this position of prominence. You got to equip kids of color, especially with a toolkit to survive. This notion of you don't have the right to do this to me, slow down. Yes, they don't. But deal with that after the fact when you call the attorney, call the ACLU, call the Black History Museum. Call somebody who can really take action on your behalf, but don't lose your life during the fight. Yeah, don't lose your life during the fight. We've had the ACLU come do Know Your Rights workshops, but I've always stopped them half short, like, stop. These things are saying, what your rights are. Do not say that to these police officers or any other enforcement agent that's coming to you, because it's not worth gambling with your life.
Next question. Black winemakers, black owners of vineyards.
And Idaho,
Yeah.
there might be one. Those a black owned vodka company.
I want wine.
But I'm Muslim, so anything alcohol-wise, I know
You guys,
nothing. I know
people
nothing.
who grows grapes. Hell, come on now.
That'd be Caldwell. I have no idea.
Caldwell.
Yeah, Caldwell. They have orchards all over the farm. So yes, that's my cup of tea.
Strategic wise, your state is going to be, what's your big next anniversary?
1890.
Didn't we just do the
Yeah, we just did the
150
big, yeah.
sesquicentennial?
So what's the next 100-year plan for black people to be economically sound in the state?
Actually, fun fact, blacks in Idaho live above the norm nationally. Because if you're black and you're in Idaho, it's because your company sent you here, and they don't transfer you when you're at the bottom. They transfer you when you're middle or above. So the vast majority of, I just got done doing a thing at HP 2 weeks ago. We had the chief diversity officer who went to our church when we were kids. She came to the lecture. We have a oddly large black professional class in Boise, Idaho.
I'm gonna repeat my question. What's the 100-year plan to make sure every black person in the state is solid
We
economically?
just built a school, a charter school, in Garden City, most of the first school in the state. That's one thing. A lot of the companies, the big three, Micron, HP, and Albertsons, have not just on a superficial level, but really invested in specifically like obviously some of the African American Leadership Council. HPI just got done they're pulling kids directly out of historically black colleges. The law school, not university, but the other one I can't think of the name. I just lost it. But they're the same thing. They had us in trying to figure out how we can create a network of protection around them, make them feel like they're at home in Idaho. And there's been a really an odd push. That's why you have this whole kick up with the Freedom Foundation in Boise State, because they're actually making an economic investment to make black students and students of color feel they can come here and achieve. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm not trying to say my neighborhood were terrible, but we didn't have any of these opportunities or supports 20 years ago. Any. Things have gotten vastly better.
So
As far
there's
as
no
resources.
100-year plan to.
I think trying to plan 100 years for anything, you'd be antiquated by the time you get year 4.
And you and I disagree on that?
The winds of change hit so quickly. Like our population has grown 6 to 8% every year in the last 3 years. There is no planning that could have been done ahead of time to anticipate that.
I'm gonna say this the last time.
Yeah, it's just the numbers are too vast.
Well, I'm gonna volunteer as a strategist. What I know, looking at this country 600 years and looking at world development, because of ecological impact, it's critically important that folks of color, well off or not, who still represent a wider group, come up with an educational institution in their state, have one connected to the continent, one that covers all the diaspora and picks planning, and the easiest way to do that is to think long-term, based on census, based on economic development. So it's just a conversation that can start taking place to anticipate what's going to happen. Because my push is there's no succession plan for our party. Because in the end of the century, it's a brown one. So if we don't have brown folks trained to lead, then we're going to die.
You gotta have like a mentorship program.
Yeah, and that my legacy, our campaign's legacy is Shirley Chisholm, Political Leadership Institute and Training. So that's, my run is about training folks to take
over.
leadership.
They gotta take
Yeah,
over. They gotta take
so
over.
I mean, we're successful we're launching in November. So part of that is going around recruiting 45 women of color, sisters, friends of color, to run for office. Not that they're gonna win, but they'll
just the
understand
process.
how to do it. This brother has run 3 different levels. I'm gonna pull them in and train people on those levels. So I'm saying to you that, maybe in a month or 2, I might text you and say, or call you and say, let's just have, because it's just a meeting. And it's a conversation twice a year about 100 years for black folks.
And luckily, like people like my mother does that kind of, she'll take.
You don't want to be involved.
That's just, but then, we have an odd degree of access here that makes it much easier to pull those people in, because like we don't have like this changing of the guard that we kind of like lost.
Gotcha.
That the generation before me
No, I got you.
is still connecting those in, and then currently.
And it's generational here.
Yeah, and so we have, that's a luxury that we have.
Yeah, you do.
And then even like our school, like I used to go to a school in Garden City. Most of our school, it's not like 38 countries. And then even, we don't have as big as an African American population, but black African population is large.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm saying.
And so so Boise is just a very weird
I
thing.
did the research.
Demographically, Boise is just very odd, and especially like same thing comes with affluence. You tend to drift away from, like, there's not a black church anymore. There's 4 churches with black pastors.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's that whole thing.
Okay, so Green Party. I'm shifting to ensure connection to folks of color. Having this 100-year conversation for folks of color for the state helps put you in a leadership position how to plan training.
I'm fully aware, and
Okay,
I am doing my best to stay on the front end of this IFF issue, because that is basically what has happened. Is we have a fairly racist group of individuals who have stepped back and decided to use the language of non-racism
Yeah.
to justify perpetuation of a systemic problem. And it's particularly onerous because of the way they chose to do it, because they went after our institutions of higher learning.
And that's the scary part.
You know, they went after diversity in college. Yes, we actually discussed that book and a book very similar at the Black History Museum about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
Challenge, invite
Yes.
him here once a year for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, having someone do a lecture, because he has an institute of anti-racism, so they're doing scientific documentation. So just bringing
Correct.
him in once a year for
So
the next
it's-
5 years, it will make it happen.
The lineup is particularly good here because Philip, he does his work cross community. He does have the connections. He does have the state, and you are fairly affluent in the community, you know, and recognized.
Very good.
Yeah.
Position yourself to move it forward.
I can make cool phone calls. That's what.
That's good. No,
He's very good at making cool phone
no,
calls.
that's, I mean,
But
that's good.
our next speaker is actually going to be Ty Simpson with the Nimiku, and she's a storyteller. And it's like,
We just worked together like a week ago.
yeah, a week ago there was a big deal. But both of them, they're practiced storytellers, they're practiced orators, and they understand, you know, the issues with the refugee community and the integration of the cultures. And it's one of those ironic things because Idaho has one of the most successful refugee programs in the United States.
No, in the world.
Yeah.
It's where I met with the reps from the European Union during the Syrian War.
Awesome.
They came here for best practices.
I love it. Congratulations.
So and that's why I'm not trying to act like we're utopia because we have like this kind of thing going on. But
I mean, human.
but systemically, Boise is really, Idaho as a whole is kind of a conundrum right beside a riddle. They have a lot of things that seem mutually exclusive or contradictory, but these outcomes that are
Measurable good results.
they're like, why? How is that possible? You know what I'm saying? Like we had once upon a time we had the Aryan compound up north,
Yeah.
but we have the most successful, you know, refugee resettlement program in the world. First practicing Jewish governor elected in America,
Yeah.
Idaho.
Yeah.
I mean, just the oldest synagogue west of Mississippi, Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho has like 12,000 Muslims, 11,000 Muslims. I mean, things that you wouldn't think of when you think of Idaho, but we have it here. And not saying we need to continue to do things we always have, but yeah, we've got a really weird.
No, it's I congratulations on this. Congratulations. It's hard. But next level of planning and strategy for the new generation. That's my question.
And when you step back and you take a look at it, and you look at climate alarmism, okay, which it exists, it does. And that's causing not just our war refugees to arrive here, but the number of food refugees, you know, famine, they're fleeing desertification, you know, and they're coming to America. And it's like one of the areas that is so inviting is the Treasure Valley. It's the culture, it's the community. And somehow, despite the rabidness of our redness, we still succeed on several of those levels.
Because they're not indicative of the Idaho, or Boise definitely, and I think greater Idaho disposition. I think they're like a very fringe, angry segment of it, but the vast majority are antithetical to what they're trying to do. And it's just, I mean, it's all people getting paid off of the rhetoric now. It's a financial thing.
It is. We both know it's financially incentivized. Somebody somewhere wants them to
Exactly.
make that story happen, so. And they got an audience that will bite.
There you go. Nice episode.
There's time. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Philip. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.